talk about The Farthest Shore. This is the third novel in Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea universe, the third of six books overall, and it's the last book in the original trilogy that were published in the early 1970s. Uh, the Farthest Shore is perhaps the most mm, pleasant of the first three novels. It is also like the others. It is a coming of age story. The first one, Wizard of Earthsea, followed the growth into maturity of a wizard named Ged, who who goes on a long sort of quest of self discovery and deeper understanding of the universe. The second is a similar quest for a young woman named Tanar, who Ged helps to escape from a cult, a sort of a stifling, narrow-minded, cruel cult that has sort of attempted to sort of trap the potential of her life. These books are very dramatic. there's there's a great deal of uncertainty of where the story is going and what precisely will be the outcome. By comparison, in my opinion, The Farthest Shore is less dramatic, and it's because this time the young person who is seeking um, adulthood and maturation is a young prince named Aren, who uh, is trying to discover. He's been sent by his father, who's an important Earthsea prince, to the sort of the Wizarding Isle, Roke, which is at the center of Earthsea, and sort of serves as its the center of its wizarding tradition. It's sort of like the Vatican or Oxford. It's where you go when there's like these big problems to solve. Something's gone wrong with the world. Roke's aware of this, and Aren's father becomes aware of it and sends him to get some answers and figure out, what's going on. The fundamental laws of the Earthsea universe are starting to shake. There are these portents and omens, and wizards can no longer remember the words. Magic in the Earthsea universe is really well crafted. It revolves around a knowledge of the true language, the language of creation, from which a entity named Segoi built the world. And wizards can learn some of this, and sorcerers and witches and such, and local kind of wise people know a few, as well as perhaps a couple of runes. But wizards make a point of studying it and discovering names and of sort of rebuilding the knowledge of this language. So for them to start to forget these things is deeply disturbing. It would be something like in our universe if mathematics stopped working, if like 2 and 2 didn't always equal 4 anymore. This is the level of threat, and so it's very dramatic. It's not just a maturation story. In the previous books, although there's sense that there are important stakes for the world in the stories, the main thing we're concerned about is the main characters, Ged and Tanar, and how they will develop as human beings and what sort of adults they will become, what values will guide their lives. And here, though, we have world level stakes where there is a great deal hanging on the development of the plot, and Aren's voyage into adulthood, a literal voyage. It's a long sail haul through Earthsea over the course of the book, is sort of paralleled. So we have two parallel tracks. We have a large world-saving, world-discovering kind of plot, and we have the personal growth of this main character. Now, the reason that it's a more pleasant book and less dramatic is that in this case, Ged goes with him. The uh, Ged is now the archmage. He's like the chancellor of Oxford, and he's the he's like the guy tasked with sort of keeping an eye on magic and reality. He speaks to dragons. He's like super famous. He's like the youngest archmage, so he's in a long time. He's very active as far as these things go, and because of his presence and because he's a character, that we've seen in the previous two books, develop into a confident, caring, well-rounded human being with a sense of his limits and the limits of his power. Because of these things, the risks in the book, in A Farthest Shore, the risks to Aren's development and to the world at large, never feel as vital and as hairy as they do in the previous books. Ged's presence is so compelling, and he is so well drawn. He's such a portrait of like the effective, wise mentor, the one that hopefully some of us have as we ourselves voyage into adulthood. That it you're not sure where the plot is going, but you're pretty sure everything's going to be okay. It's closer to a melodrama where the twists and the turns, but you're reasonably sure that everything will be all right and that virtue will prevail. And because of that, there's more bells and whistles in this book. There's more world building. There's more complexity. Like A Wizard of Earthsea, it involves a voyage like through all of Earthsea, going to many different places which haven't been visited before, but you can sort of see them on the little map that comes on the inside of the cover of the book. Other things get developed further, like the relationship between dragons in this universe and men. Ged gets to communicate with some dragons, and because Aren has Ged there for most of the book, to just sort of really guide him moment to moment on the meaning of what's going on, we get to ride that, and we get to see the universe of Earthsea through Ged's eyes by listening to how Aaron applies to him, and that is really fun, and it's really well written, and it's a nice portrait of sort of Ged as like the mature sage who knows the limits of his power and understands his place in the world. And it's really pleasant to imagine a young person like Aren, who's a good guy and is right at the... He's like 15. He's right at the moment of adulthood. He comes from a privileged background, and he sort of knows it, but he also knows that he's not... There's not a lot to him yet, that sort of the next big page of his life is about to turn. There's a bit at the beginning when he offers his service to Ged, and he gives a little speech about who he is and what he can do, and how there just isn't that much else to him. And very much he wants to see the world anew. He wants to build a deeper relationship with the world, and Ged is his road to that, away from home and family. Many people often find a mentor figure of some kind away from home and family around this time. It could be like a sports coach or an early employer or a distant family friend, but it's that step away from the self that you've always been inside your home and your family life. And so it's an important tale, and Aren is another kind of reasonably typical Le Guin hero. He's perceptive. He doesn't rush to do things. He listens. He pays attention. He remembers things. He takes his time. In Le Guin stories, one of the worst things you can be is reckless and impulsive. You might need a little of it to sort of get you going, but it's usually presented as a difficult quality for a person to handle, because the world is so complicated and full of meaning, that what's often rewarded is a more contemplative attitude. And Ged exemplifies that. One of my favorite moments in the book is fairly early in their voyage. Aren wakes up. They're on Ged's boat, which is called Lookfar, which he's had a long time, and has become sort of legendary, like that boat from Jaws, except if it wasn't destroyed by a shark. Uh, and Aren wakes up, and Ged is just sitting there with his foot on the tiller, wearing a loincloth, just sort of enjoying the sun and the waves. And he's just kind of guiding the boat, and he's singing like a little nonsense song that he's making up for himself, just like Makiro kara Buddha da. It doesn't mean anything. It's not the true speech. And this is the kind of life experience that Aren has probably never had or even seen, because he's from a noble family. They're a nice group, you get the sense. But like, they come from the world of like formality and tradition, and all the pictures of this, the casualness of it, the casualness of the clothing, the nonsense, the seeming idleness, this is really foreign to him. But it's a big part of what goes into making a successful adult self, is knowing that this too is part of reality, and this too is something that has value. And even though they're on this huge quest to discover like a threat to reality itself, it doesn't mean that you can't just sort of sit back and enjoy being out on the water. You get the feeling Ged hasn't really taken to Archmage life, because he, all those meetings, and he loves this kind of just this quiet, direct relationship with powerful non-human forces like the sun and the sea, and it's a lovely vision, and it shares with Aren. It helps him build a deeper relationship with reality, and also, of course, when you take that first long trip and you really spend a lot of time somewhere else, it's so valuable in teaching you the variety of possible lives, and the things that are common and the things that are different to human life everywhere. And this quest is pretty long. Like, this isn't over in like a week. This is like a several months journey with Ged as they seek out the threat against Earthsea. The threat itself is familiar. It's like the person who is trying to defy natural order, in this case death itself. It's someone who wants to live forever, and in doing so they have sort of cracked the rules that govern the natural processes of Earthsea, and so they're birth isn't working well, death isn't working well, the true speech is being lost, because they've sort of cracked a hole in the universe to try to suck it dry, but it's impossible, so they're not even going to get what they want out of it, but they also can't stop. It's sort of that ceaseless quest for gain and life eternal, which is so often the enemy on some level of these sorts of things. It's that, it's Voldemort with his Horcruxes, and it's the Emperor with his dark Sith energy. It's that I'm going to set myself above, and in doing so I will doom everything, and I won't even get what I want. It's not an unfamiliar, but it's weighted well throughout the story, and it provides the impetus that keeps them moving. But really, the guts of it are Ged's, the example, and the tutoring that Ged provides to Aren, and of course they're Aren has to learn the lessons that Ged provides, and has to exemplify various virtues on the quest, eventually saving Ged when all seems lost, and returning to a deeper destiny. I don't want to get too much into detail, but it is a good example of how, when you have built up a powerful character who the readership or the audience feels that they can rely upon to respond correctly to the events of the book, it changes the pleasure of reading. There's other pleasures than dramatic pleasures. So, in Wizard of Earthsea, although Ged has help from various people, he doesn't have that one mentor guiding him through life over several years, sort of keeping a calm hand on his shoulder and telling him, oh, take a look at this, take a look at that. And so Ged's decisions carry a great deal of dramatic weight, even if he gets help at many key occasions. He doesn't always get help. He often has to act on his own intuition and sense of the situation. And then in the Tombs of Atuan, Tenar, presented with the puzzle of what to do about Ged, um, is it's even more dramatic. It is, she's literally without aid. Like, it's a complete secret. There's not one person around her that she can rely on in any kind of meaningful way. And this is deep. So she has to be extraordinarily cagey and deceptive, and it gives her decisions. And for quite a while, she's very cagey and deceptive with Ged, very challenging, very provoking. There's a great deal of dramatic weight in the scenes between them early on as they begin to forge a kind of trust that Tenar's never really experienced because she's been trapped in this cult. So the drama there for me now is extreme, even though the events of the book are not as large and not as exemplified by like kind of the large scale of action as Farthest Shore. But Farthest Shore, with Ged's hand on Aren's shoulder, what you're looking at is not so much the pleasure of dramatic storytelling. Some is there, but you're looking more at the pleasure of a good mentoring. The pleasure is watching. Oh, if only it's nice to see Aren get the kind of guidance that Ged provides. It's nice to imagine the sort of like the world working out well because a caring, wise, and powerful figure is at your shoulder. I'm not, it's kind of like watching an episode of Highway to Heaven or Touched by an Angel. It's like, what if there was someone who just knew what needed to happen and could keep me on track? It isn't all in Farthest Shore, but it's in a lot of it. Aren does take some independent action, and there are some moments where he's separated from Ged and has to try to figure things out. But mostly he's on a safe ride. But then, so the pleasure then is more like, okay, in this idealized version of the mentor-student relationship or of the adult-youth relationship, what would that look like? And you get more of these the funds of like thinking about the things that Ged says and does and how they play out. His ideas about balance and about enjoying both your power and the limits of your power, of trying not to do anything more than you need to do because reality itself is so beautiful and wondrous and strange. There's a sequence in Farthest Shore that's one of my favorites in Earthsea. They meet rescued by these people who are briefly mentioned in one of the other books just as sort of a legend. They're called like the People of the Sea, and they just sail around on huge rafts all the time. They come to land like once a year to repair things and to cut trees and build new rafts, but otherwise they are just the people of the open sea, and kids grow up knowing how to swim before they walk. And they spend quite a bit of time with them, and it becomes a powerful image for Aren about how, although his life as a noble kid seems very solid, it's like there are these traditions, and there's this finery you wear, and castles made of rock, that really all of life is floating floating on the open sea. And although we can learn more about it, and we do rituals that work to respect these relationships, that if we attempt to make deep changes in how this work, we will come to grief, like the antagonist of the story trying to use dark magic to overcome death itself and winding up doing only damage and not even getting the prize that he sought. It's a powerful image, and it provides a lot of pleasure. There are a lot of pleasurable fantasy moments in the book, like when they talk to dragons, or they confront some slavers. They find some people who had formerly been magicians and craftsmen, and they see their suffering from the disorder that's been let loose on the world. There's a lot of sort of travelogue pleasures through the world of Earthsea in this book. But the dramatic elements are correspondingly sort of pared down. But that doesn't mean they won't come back, because 15 years or so after the original Earthsea trilogy, Ursula Le Guin wrote three more Earthsea books, which are really really powerful in different ways, and great examples of continuing to develop the rules of a fictional world in ways that extend the themes of the original books, but now are sort of for people who are older. I like to imagine, the people who were born around 1958 or so, and they were like 13 or 15 when they read the original Earthsea books. Now they're in their 30s, and they're ready to read about Earthsea, but now as adults who are past these kind of pivotal rite of passage moments in their youth, and they're ready to see what Ursula Le Guin and Earthsea have to say to them about, the challenges of later points in life. So we'll talk about those. But yeah, Farthest Shore, give it a read. Definitely fun.